So the first thing you want to do is want to go to settings, graphic settings, and adjust your resolution, your field of view, and keep the upscaling on native. Don't use upscaling yet because we will be using it based on what your system can handle, basically, okay? So the second thing you want to do is you want to go to a location where your FPS will drop the most, right? For example, and look at the direction that will drop your FPS the most as well. For example, if I look this way, I have around like 106 FPS or whatever. If I look this way, I get around 94 FPS. Or better yet, just come to this location. This is basically where the game starts. And go to this spot here. Again, we had 94, right? If you come here and you look this way, as you can see, now we have 84 FPS. So in this spot here, basically, this is one of the most intense locations in the game in terms of FPS. So this is as low as your FPS will get. So if you optimize your game based on this FPS here, you'll basically ensure that it will never drop below this threshold, right? So this is what you want to do. Then basically we go to the advanced graphics settings and just copy these optimal settings right here. This is basically the minimum optimal settings. What I mean by that is by using these settings here, you will basically ensure that you get the most noticeable difference in image quality. What I mean by that is like the biggest jump in quality is going from low to high to medium, right? Going from low to medium. For example, if you go from low shadows to medium shadows, this is the most important jump in terms of quality for the shadows. It will enable 90% of the shadows in game, right? And that's the most important jump in terms of image quality. Going from medium to high to ultra to experimental, it basically will just like add like some extra details and all that. But the most important one is from low to medium. Okay, so just copy these settings here and go inside the game and see your FPS. For us, we have around 85 FPS. So if you're like me, you have like around 60 FPS or more, then just go to the next chapter and we will basically enhance these settings even more. Okay, so if you don't have 60 FPS while using these settings on DLSS native, all right, on native resolution, that's what you can do. If you have like maybe like around 50 FPS or 51, 52, something like that, then you can just enable DLSS quality. This basically gives you around 25% more performance, and it will basically make that 50 FPS go to around 62, 63. And from there, like, you're basically good to go. You can start basically playing the game. If you still cannot reach 60 FPS while using DLSS quality, then the next thing you want to do is basically make this quality here, just put it on balance instead. This will basically give you that extra boost that you need. From going to quality to balance, you will gain around 7 to 8% more performance. And this will basically get you to that 60 FPS. If you still cannot get to 60 FPS with balanced upscaling, then the next thing you want to do is basically, you probably cannot use the optimal settings, then just put this on medium. Just basically put everything on medium instead, and medium is still looking pretty good. Again, as I said, the most important jump in image quality is going from low to medium settings. Okay, so put everything on medium and see if you can reach 60 FPS this way. If you can reach 60 FPS this way, you're good to go. If you still cannot reach 60 FPS with medium settings on the DLSS balanced, then the next thing you want to do is go from balanced to performance. This will degrade the image quality a little bit. It will make like things a little bit blurry when you move, and it will be more noticeable. But if you, I assume if you cannot reach 60 FPS with these settings here, I assume that you have like maybe like a low-end card a little bit. So maybe you have like a small monitor, or you play on like a laptop. a 15-inch screen or a 17-inch screen or whatever. So the smaller the screen, the better the image quality, and the less degradation in quality will happen when you use basically the upscaling, because the screen is smaller, right? So if you use performance, you will probably get to, it will give you that extra like 8%. It goes basically from internal resolution of 58% to 50% instead. So it will give you that extra boost in performance that you might need to reach 60 FPS. So if you cannot like reach 60 FPS with these settings here, then the next thing you want to do is two things. Either you drop medium to low. This will make the game look a little bit like, it will make it look worse, basically. As I said, the most important one is going from low to medium, right? So either you drop this to low and it will give you more FPS, or you keep it on medium and you reduce your internal resolution instead. Again, if you have a low-end card, most of those cards are not meant to game on 1080p. For example, my old laptop, my card there, it's the GTX 860M. It's meant to be played at a resolution of 768, right? So just start dropping the internal resolution and see if that will get you to 60 FPS. And if you get 60 FPS, you're good to go. If you still cannot get it, then it's completely fine. Just enjoy it with whatever FPS you have, maybe like 50 or 45 or whatever. And again, it's fine because it's a single player game and it's slow-paced game as well. It's not like a high action shooter or whatever. So you can still play it at like 45 or 50 FPS. It's totally fine. All right. So yeah, that's about it. Now, if you have already 60 FPS like me here, what we can do now is we go to the settings and we enable DLSS Quality. All right. Quality will basically give you around like 25% more performance. As you can see here, we had around like 86, right? Now we go to around 116 FPS or whatever FPS you have. So from here on out, we will use this extra FPS to basically enhance these settings even more. Now, the most important things you need to do is basically shadows from medium to ultra. Because going to ultra, basically medium to high, it will only increase the resolution of the shadows already existent, which is like the 90% shadows in the game. And going from high to ultra, it will basically add that missing 10% shadows that are missing from the game, right? It will basically allow like one object to have two different shadows at the same time. Maybe like one from a lamp and one from like a natural lighting from like a window, right? So the jump from high to ultra is the most important here. So we put shadows on ultra, and then basically the maximum optimal settings. If you already have 60 FPS, it will give you around 25% more performance by using the DLSS Quality. So we have around like 20% performance to play with here and to basically increase it here. So you want to put object quality on high, particles on experimental, lighting on experimental, post-processing quality on experimental. These three things, again, they do affect FPS, but they only affect it when you go inside buildings or inside like basically interior areas. And because you are inside a building or interior areas, the game has less things to render anyways, and you will gain FPS anyways. So it will even out, and these settings basically don't matter too much in terms of performance. So you can just put them on experimental if you want. Or if you want, just put them all on ultra. It's there's not too much big of a difference anyways. Then what you want to do is the shader quality on high, the shadows again, keep it on ultra, textures on ultra, volumetric effect detail, keep it on ultra, and vegetation detail on high, and character detail on experimental. All right, confirm and go back into game and see what FPS you have. Again, as you see here, we went from that 116 back to around 87 or 86. So for you, you were at 60 FPS, you enabled DLSS quality, you went to around like maybe like 78 or 80 FPS. Same for me. I was at around 86, 87. I enabled DLSS quality. It gave me around 116 FPS or whatever. We did the most optimal settings and it brought me back to around 87 FPS. So by doing these settings, you will basically use that extra FPS to go back to around 60 FPS, but with a way better image quality, basically the maximum optimal settings. All right. So this is basically what you want to do. If you drop a little bit below that 50 FPS, that 60 FPS to around like maybe 58, 59, something like that, it's totally fine. Like you can just like play like that because that's basically the very low 1% chances that will happen, because this is like one of the most intense angles and scenes in the game, right? So you will never basically drop this far. Maybe you will drop maybe like for like 1 second or 2 seconds anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Or you can just like basically if you want to tone down a little bit of these settings instead of experimental, just put them on ultra instead. All right, so test your game, see how the FPS goes, and just basically if you have still around like 60 FPS, then you're good to go. For me, if you have a card, I have a 4060 Ti 16GB model alongside with the Ryzen 5 7600. Basically, if you have a card like me, or even better, maybe like a 4070 or whatever, and you have more FPS to spare, as you can see, we still have around 85 FPS, then for me, I will basically increase the settings even more. And what I play at personally is shader quality on ultra, on experimental, the textures on experimental, volumetric effect detail on experimental, precision detail only on ultra. This is too much of a FPS drop without too much difference in image quality, so keep it on ultra instead. And this is basically it. Object quality also on ultra, and you basically confirm, and as you can see, the FPS here goes to around 64 to 65 FPS. And again, it's good to keep at least like an extra 5 FPS, because again, you are moving, you are fighting, and as you can see, the FPS does drop to around 61, right? If I stand still, it's around 62, something like that, 64, 65. And keep in mind, I am recording on the same PC, so I lose about like 7% performance or 6% performance. So this 65 is usually around 68 or 69 FPS. So it's totally fine for me. Again, this is the most intense scene in the game. One of the most. I didn't finish the game yet, right? So this is one of the most intense scenes in the game. As you can see, we have around 65 here, but if we actually go and play the game, as you can see, it's around like 70, 69, 68, 70-ish. If we turn here, it's like 82, 84, 85. So it's pretty good. But just in case there is a scene that does drop our FPS a lot, I know that it will never drop below that 60 FPS. All right, so this is about it. I mean, these are my settings here. If you want to copy them, if you have like a similar card with me, or if you have like a better card, I mean, why are you even watching this video? I mean, this is one of the most optimized games that we had like for a while, to be honest. So this is pretty good. Like even at 1060, a GTX 1060 can play this game on medium settings with quality upscaling at 1080p on like around like 60-ish FPS, which is pretty impressive. I mean, it's really good. They did a really good job with the optimization for this game. One thing though, just because you're here, here's a free tip as well, because you watched this far. The FOV does play a big role in FPS as well. It's like maybe like a 10% or 12% FPS difference. So for example, right, let's see here. We have around like 65 FPS, right? And this is maximum FOV, right? Just look how much FPS it costs. As you can see, we went from around like 65 to 72. That is a pretty significant, that's around like 10% or like 11% FPS difference. FPS performance difference, right? Which is pretty insane. So that's your free tip for today. Like if you still need like a couple more FPS without like reducing the quality of the game, you can reduce the FOV. Again, not a lot of people like to play at like a narrow FOV, so again, do this as a last resort, but it's pretty useful to do this, right? But for me personally, I like to play at around like 90 or like 95, so this is pretty comfortable for me. And also one other thing, just like, I mean, we're just rambling at this point, but one other thing which is pretty funny, I was testing here and it's pretty funny. There is something wrong with the bushes. Okay, I don't know what it is, but just take a look at this, right? We're at around 70-ish FPS, right? We are not inside the bush. We are at around 70 FPS. We go inside the bush. It's around 60. We go outside the bush. We are around 70 FPS. We go inside the bush. We at around like 60. Almost like around 50 maybe. Yeah. Around like 60 FPS. Which is pretty insane. I don't know what happened. I don't know what's the deal with the bushes, but they eat your FPS. I don't know what the hell is happening with these, but look at this. Like, it's pretty insane. From 70 to 60. And I don't know why. Like, I don't really know why. Like, it's really weird. Maybe like they're not optimized, or like maybe when you go inside the bush, like there's a lot of physics happening, right? And that causes the FPS to drop or whatever. So I'm not really sure what's happening there, but yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I don't really know, but yeah, that's about it. All right, so this is about it for the video. Again, if you want to play like KCD2 right away without like playing KCD1, and you want like a story recap or like a lore and history recap of like the first game, you can basically click on this video here. In 13 minutes, you will understand everything about Kingdom Come Deliverance. And if you're unsure whether you want to play KCD1 first before playing the second game, then you can click on this video here. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and give it a like. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.